The things that are handled by bots are the things that don't require a human being. I was having a conversation recently with a woman who's head of customer experience for a bank in Connecticut. And she said, and this just rung in my head, there's no inherent value to hearing your balance from a human compared to a virtual assistant. I mean, conversely, if you have a very personal or an emotional issue or something where there's confusion or you're not sure what you're supposed to do, or you're even in fear, like in a situation where your credit card has been stolen or your account's been compromised, or there's been a death in the family or something that requires decision-making and human connection, then that's when a human does their best work.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Rick DeLisi. He is the co-author of Digital Customer Service, Transforming Customer Experience for an On-Screen World, co-authored with Glia CEO Dan McKelly. He is also the co-author of The Effortless Experience and was part of the team that created the customer effort score metric, now being used by hundreds of companies worldwide. Prior to joining Glia, the leader in helping FLs reinvent how they serve their customers, he was VP Advisory with Gartner, specializing in customer service and customer experience. He also has a background in the airline and hospitality industries. Congrats on the Effortless Experience and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks, Karl. Looking forward to have a very human conversation with you.
Absolutely. And so on that topic, I'm excited to discuss with you how, because a lot of companies are trying to use AI and really leaning into these things, but it seems like the best ones are finding ways to help AI be and enhance humans to do more human things better. So how do you recommend people go about using AI to help humans be more human?
So the work that I've been doing is specific to contact centers. So when you have a problem or an issue and you have to reach out to some company that you're a customer of, invariably you either go online and try to interact with them digitally or call on the phone. And so that whole contact center business has now been elevated as a result of the use of AI. And interestingly, when AI is applied correctly, it allows your human beings, your frontline people, arguably the most important people in your company, because they're the ones who are dealing directly with customers, to be more human. So let's break it down. When you think about the reasons that customers would contact a company, and we work specifically in financial services, but the reasons that you would call or contact your bank or credit union, about half of those interactions are routine, everyday, simple issues. And now, thanks to the advances in voice AI, those can be resolved to the total satisfaction of customers without needing a human. So interacting directly with a virtual assistant, that's about half of all interactions, can easily be automated. But the other half, the ones that require or are best served by a human interaction, that human on the company side, the frontline agent, their performance and efficiency can be enhanced greatly when they know who this person is that they're talking to before they even say hello, and when they know what that person's issue is. And so interacting with a virtual assistant allows the frontline agent, when they finally have a conversation with you, to have an even more human conversation, to really connect with you and understand your issue and your problem, because they have more capacity and they have the assistance of these virtual assistants that are acting like a co-pilot in the interaction. So ultimately, everybody wins.
Yeah, and I think it also goes a long way to helping the employees, the humans that deal with the more complicated things that require a human involved. It can't just be automated like a password reset or checking a balance, that sort of stuff. That they're not spending their time on these simple things, so they can work more effectively and not have to rush through something that's more crucial, like things where you're transferring like an account because someone's passed away, or things that require a lot of verifying people's like identities, information, and doing more complex tasks that are often more riskier if done wrong. So you don't want to automate them, or you want to have someone who has that, like, hang on, this seems fishy kind of intuition that AIs just don't have, or it requires more of complex communication information, or kind of tactfully handling something if the customer is upset or stressed out about something. Then having the humans able to handle those and not be bogged down with 500 password reset connection requests a week, that does allow them to spend more time doing the things that only the humans can do well.
And frankly, to be able to do them even better.
Yeah, because then you have although I have heard like there's, at least on the like the hospital side of things, when people know there's like an AI tool listening, they're less open about, like, they're not necessarily communicating the same way because there is that like surveillancing. So, but I think having getting the information early on from a person, so that when the human gets on the call, they don't have to ask the same basic questions on who are you, what's your problem, that sort of stuff, and allows them to get to more of the nitty gritty, the deeper conversation. And I think that's valuable. I think there are still some little kinks to work out there, but I think overall the mindset of, instead of replacing people with everything AI and expecting it to work just as well, but it's like, okay, how can we use these tools to make the employee experience better? Because I doubt the employees love doing a 200th password reset like of the day, and also they get more enjoyment out of connecting with the clients and helping actually feel like they're making a difference in those clients' lives. That's much more satisfying to do, and also better for the clients, because they're actually, I can't remember how many like times where I'm like halfway lost through a phone tree, just like, I want to talk to a person who can just answer my damn problem.
Representative, rep 0,
Yes.
0.
So I think there's definitely the mindset shift you're describing there is the much more appealing one than alternatives out there.
Yeah, I mean, you used healthcare as an example. So let's think about a situation we're all very familiar with: going to the doctor's office. You show up, park your car, and then you're greeted by a receptionist who takes all your information. Eventually, you're led into an exam room, and then a nurse takes all your vitals and asks you about your issue. And then finally, the doctor comes in and takes care of or treats whatever your problem is. Well, in this scenario, or at least in the current day before AI, or in the old days, the frontline agent was all three of those people. They were the receptionist, the nurse, and the doctor. Now they get to just be the doctor, because again, by the time the agent is having a conversation with a customer, they already know who that person is. They've been authenticated through the system, and they already know what their issue is, so that the human connection begins right at the point of solving the problem or resolving the issue. You don't have to go through all of that routine stuff or all of that important validation or authentication stuff, because that's all done by the virtual assistant, so that when the live rep enters the equation, they're now the doctor, and they're focused exclusively on connecting with that person and solving their problem.
So what do you think is the kind of biggest hurdle for companies to implement this sort of solution into their existing processes and systems?
Well, the biggest issue is the fact that you've already created this mess of different technologies provided by different vendors that are all piled on top of each other or bolted onto the customer service machine, and recognizing that this is a chance to have the ultimate do-over, to start with a unified platform where all forms of voice and digital and AI are all part of a single system, and everything is connected to everything. So first of all, recognizing that you don't have to keep living the way you've been living for all these years. Number two is this fear that, oh no, the more AI we use, the more we're going to lose touch with our customers. We're going to lose the human connection. Everything's going to be handled by bots. And that's so not true. The things that are handled by bots are the things that don't require a human being. I was having a conversation recently with a woman who's head of customer experience for a bank in Connecticut. And she said, and this just rung in my head, there's no inherent value to hearing your balance from a human compared to a virtual assistant. I mean, conversely, if you have a very personal or an emotional issue or something where there's confusion or you're not sure what you're supposed to do, or you're even in fear, like in a situation where your credit card has been stolen or your account's been compromised, or there's been a death in the family or something that requires decision-making and human connection, then that's when a human does their best work. So when the system knows immediately which issues it can handle instantly and to the complete satisfaction of the customer, and then also knows that it can immediately transition that interaction to a human who's now set up for success to deal with your issue, that's the best of both worlds. So this fear that we're going to lose touch with our customers or that we're going to lose the human connection, that just simply isn't true. But what is true is that that human connection isn't needed for every interaction. In fact, it's just about half.
Yeah, I mean, there's already a lot of the check your balance or on like what your current billing statement is on a lot of these like financial tools. It's already an automated thing, and making it so that there's the human interactions, like I said, are the ones that are a lot more emotionally charged or require dealing with things beyond just the numbers, beyond just the data about the experience this client is having or this customer is having with in their life, and how the company fits into it is really important. And it sounds like you have some case studies of helping people apply this stuff so far. Is there anything you can share? I would love to hear what the first steps people need to take in order to implement this stuff if they're interested.
Well, the first step is to recognize that you don't have to be bound to the system that you've created somewhat by accident or somewhat by happenstance that you're dealing with right now. And the reality is, for virtually every company, their customer service engine started with a nucleus of telephony. That's how it all began. In fact, there was a time when calling up on a 1-800 number seemed like a bonus. Hey, a toll-free call, how cool. Or I can call this company directly and speak to a representative. There was a time that was a new thing, but that became the thing for years. And then after that, as new digital technologies and new ways of communicating began to be developed, they were all created by separate companies with separate agendas, and none of them were ever designed to be tied together. And so what most companies are working with right now that haven't evolved to a more AI-centric model is this bolt-on approach of different technologies that don't speak to each other. So first of all, recognize it doesn't have to be that way. And second of all, realize that even if there is pushback from either executives who are fearful of the intrusion of AI or frontline people who are afraid that we're all going to lose our jobs and be replaced by bots, neither one of those things is true at all. And in fact, frontline agents who might have been skeptical or reluctant at first to be co-piloted by AI virtual assistants very quickly realize this makes my job a lot easier. It makes it easier for me to have a human connection, to be able to concentrate on who I'm interacting with versus toggling back and forth between a million different screens, or spending the whole first minute or two of an interaction confirming who the customer is and diagnosing their issue. All of that can be done by the virtual assistant so that when the human enters the equation, they're the doctor and they're focused exclusively on treating the patient.
Yeah, I think one of the key factors for making this transition work, because you mentioned there's kind of fearful executives and fearful frontline people, is that leadership needs to really clearly communicate and have the mindset of, we're not trying to just cut costs and be able to let people go and replace them with these tools, but we're trying to find ways to reach that balance like you've been talking about, where our existing team can get more done and have a better experience, and the customers get a better experience, which will in turn boost sales and revenue and repeat business, and overall helps the company grow by implementing these tools. Because while, I mean, we both share the perspective that these tools can be used to, without having to, like, you don't use it to cut head count, or you're not replacing people with it. I think a lot of, I mean, I don't like calling them leaders, or more executives, have the mindset of, let's just start trying to replace people with these things to cut costs. And so while and because of like kind of what's been going on the last year or so in the business world, with companies making lots of cuts because basically they think they can, they don't need people because of AI or for other like reasons. I think just the mindset most people have is that unless they're actual leaders that are trying to implement these changes, that are communicating properly and actually can demonstrate that their intention is not to cut headcount, I think it's still gonna be really difficult to make that initial shift without a lot of resistance, just because of, it could be done with the best intentions, but just the optics of it are still going to be really difficult to overcome, just because of what's been going on lately in the business world.
I think you would have been 100% right, Karl, about a year ago. But as more and more organizations begin to evolve to this model, they're seeing right away, this is best for everybody. You know, traditionally in the contact center world, there's always been this struggle, this trade-off, these two conflicting forces. On one hand, there are some people who are all about efficiency. What can we do to drive costs down? How can we minimize the expense of serving our customer base? So efficiency is a powerful motivator, but also so is experience. We want to try to create the best possible experience for our customers. We want to try to build loyalty, especially for credit unions or community banks that are truly interested in building a community of people. Those two forces, efficiency versus experience, have always been in conflict with each other. But what we're seeing now is it's possible to achieve both at the highest levels ever and simultaneously. So when it comes to change management, for any individual leader, they should think to themselves, is the person or people I'm talking to, are they more motivated by efficiency? If so, there's a whole story about cutting waste and eliminating unnecessary live interactions and greatly reducing the cost to serve customers. That story is real clear. But if there's people who are more interested in experience and creating relationships and building loyalty, that story is also really clear, because by providing people with instant responses to simple routine questions, that's a great experience. By enabling humans to be better at connecting with customers, that's a better experience. So this tension, this trade-off between efficiency and experience has now been broken in a way that has never been possible before. So no matter which side of that coin any individual person or team sits on, that story is very clear to be told. And by the way, then the other side of that coin becomes a glorious ancillary benefit as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, when you mentioned the change management, you need to be able to understand where the other person's coming from and what's going to resonate with them. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge. Is one of the reasons why a lot of the AI implementations of the past year haven't worked very well, is because the change management hasn't been done very well. They're just kind of throw it in there quickly, or they're not communicating well. There's all sorts of ways it can go wrong. I think it's overall the tools and the like system that you've been describing does work. I think it just the actual application of the change management, of getting it in place and getting everyone on board is not done or handled as well as it could be. And so a lot of these potentially beneficial changes that we've been talking about aren't implemented properly and aren't seeing the ROI from it, not because it doesn't work, just because the people trying to implement the changes don't handle it well.
Right. Yeah, there's two things I've learned about change management. One of them is WIFM, what's in it for me. Inevitably, when companies make big changes or have initiatives, they stress how much more benefit this will be either to our customers or to the company. But what about the benefit to me? And what we're describing here, using a channelless model, again, that seamlessly blends all forms of AI and voice and digital, as well as this idea of AI for all, AI that's not just customer facing, but also helps frontline agents as well as supervisors and managers and executives. There's a lot of WIFM there. There's a lot of what's in it for me. And then the other thing, you mentioned this before, we used to say, it's not what you say, but how you say it. And what we've learned in change management is it's not what you say or how you say it. It's what the other person hears that matters. And if they're hearing a message that the company is evolving to practices that make my job easier and more satisfying and even more engaging, well, then there's a powerful WIFM message there for everybody.
Yeah, I definitely think that's one of the key factors that most of these companies trying to implement it don't do very well. So thank you so much for connecting with me today, Rick. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a review, and share it. If you want to connect with myself or Rick, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.